Hey, welcome to the channel. My name is Alvin Poh. I created this channel to put out videos that will be helpful to you. Videos that come from my experiences, my mistakes, my lessons that I learned as an entrepreneur of over 20 years of experience. If you are a business owner, entrepreneur, or founder, these are going to be very useful for you. So watch on. Today I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the 5E skill engine, how it works, how it was developed, and why it's so useful and helpful to you. Now, the 5E skill engine wasn't something that developed overnight. In fact, I didn't know that whatever I used was known as the 5E skill engine. The business that I created was Vodian. Vodian was a web hosting company, and we grew from nothing to become the largest in Singapore. I did this together with my co-founder, and at that point of time when we first started the business, we were 17 years old. 17. We were in Polytechnic studying for a diploma, and we had no idea what running a business was like. And so that journey that took us from 0 to $30 million was this journey that just went everywhere. We had to learn the mistakes, we had to learn how to run a business, we had to make sacrifices, we had to fail, we had to go through this long and arduous path. This path is something that I tell a lot of my coaching clients. In my mind, back then, the journey that it took from like nothing to a successful business was this straight line from A to B, and there was this straight line. And that is typically what a lot of us imagine. In our heads, this is what reality is. Oftentimes, in fact, I can say all times, it's never the case. When we want to get from point A to point B, that journey is never a straight line. Typically what happens is we go all over the place. There's ups and downs, there's valleys, there's obstacles to clear, there are minefields, we need to cross like mountains and seas and lakes, and that journey becomes something that's way more complex and way more difficult than we imagined. That was the journey that took me from 0 to $30 million. That was why it took 17 years, and that was through a series of mistakes, hard works, lessons, experiences, everything that it took actually get the business there. In 2020, when I came back to Singapore, I decided that I needed to translate all that knowledge onto paper, onto a format that could be understood by people. And after I exited the business, I was approached by a lot of startup founders and business owners about how to grow their business, about how to really like scale it up. They wanted to learn from me what I did, and then so that they could apply it to their business as well. I tried to help as best as I could, but it was very difficult. It was difficult because there was no common framework. When someone says something or when someone asks a question, they have their own assumptions, conceptions of how things work, and there's a lot of context that isn't there. And this happens with anything. That's why when someone asks, how do I grow my business? Or why is it that I have trouble growing my team? Or how do I get more customers? It's never truly the question that they need to ask. Oftentimes we need to go and delve a lot deeper. We need to understand why they're asking that, what are the real problems, and all that, right? And this is something that I talk about in my book as well. It's the curse of knowledge. The curse of knowledge was from this experiment, this study that was conducted a few decades ago, between two groups of people. And you can try this experiment as well. So the researcher told one group, who were known as the tappers, she told them about one popular song that everybody knew, and asked them to tap it out. Listen to the song, listen to the rhythm, and tap it out on the table using their fingers, so that the other group could listen and make a guess about what the song was. So, and here's the interesting thing. She asked the first group, the tappers, what their level of confidence was that the other party could guess the right song. And everybody had fairly confident estimates. They were guessing 50, 60, 70%. But when the listeners actually made their guesses, they found that the percentage dropped to about 10. Like, nobody knew what song it was. It was something that was shocking because on one hand, the tappers had this high confidence level that the other party could understand them, and on the other hand, we have reality, which showed that there was this huge gap, this huge difference between the tappers and the listeners, and this gap was tremendous. The thing is, this gap happens all aspects of our lives, especially business, especially entrepreneurship. When I realized that, I decided to spend time to translate whatever I had in my mind onto paper. All the lessons, the mistakes, how I did it, growing and scaling my business from $0 to $30 million, and put them down onto paper. That was how the 5E scale engine was born, but it wasn't done overnight. It took a really long time. It took months before the 5E scale engine became the 5E scale engine. At first, the 5E scale engine was just known as three things. I only had three principles. At first, I called it the ACE growth engine, or the ACE engine. It was attract, convert, empower. Attract was all about marketing and acquiring people to your business, acquiring the customers that the business needs. Connect was like creating this sense of relevance, this ability to connect with your customers. And E was about empower, all about the team that you have, and making sure that they could actually do the work on an organizational level so that you could actually run that business. And I thought that was a good framework that we could use to communicate about business. But I realized that wasn't the case at all. There were so many gaps that I decided to scrap that and really iterate it further. The second major iteration was the TripleE growth engine. So I went back again and I started drawing on paper diagrams that could actually explain the concepts further. I realized that ACE, while they were good, they weren't comprehensive at all. So I broke it down. Each main principle would have sub-principles. I looked at Envision instead. Envision, where you had I think the product market fit and your ideal customers and your USP, and I put customer acquisition under Envision. And then I had Empower. Empower was about the team. I think that was absolutely necessary. And one of the main problems that businesses always had was about how to hire the right people, how to retain the team, how to fire the wrong people. So the Empower principle was very important, and I left it there and expanded upon it as well. And then the third principle became Execute. I thought Execute was necessary because now that we had everything, we needed to talk about efficiency. We needed to make sure that we had a high level of execution. And so I thought that was great. I thought that was a really comprehensive, or rather more comprehensive version of my first model. I realized that wasn't the case because there were still gaps. I drew everything. I had like multiple versions of the diagrams. I even had a nice logo for this, but I realized that it was still lacking. And that was when I further iterated it. So the third iteration, I put everything together, and on top of that, I also put Engage into the picture. So the TripleE growth engine became known as this house of scale. I thought the house was great. In reality, I guess I was pretty lazy because I just put everything into this diagram all together like building blocks. And so I called it the house of scale. The fourth principle that I added in was Engage. Engage was about the marketing and the sales aspect of things. And I put in the customer journey also. So it was starting to become a lot more fleshed out. It was starting to become a lot more solid. And I thought that was great until I realized that there's one more thing that I absolutely had to put in. After speaking to multiple clients about that, after speaking to multiple people about that, I realized that there is one more aspect that differentiates people, that people need to understand and need to develop. in order to scale up their businesses. And I realized my mistake lay in the fact that I was looking at the business and just the business. There was one crucial aspect, which was actually the entrepreneur, the business owner, the person who was running the show. That aspect was huge. I realized that we needed to understand who we are, why we did certain things, our limiting beliefs, our thought processes, before we could actually work on our business. And that was why the House of Scale evolved. It had a second version where I added one more building block, and that was known as Evolve. And that was when we actually looked at the entrepreneur. We understood everything about the mindsets that were necessary to scale up your business. And I thought that was great. But the one last problem I had was the House of Scale wasn't the best framework, I guess. The House of Scale, when you think of houses, it's very immobile. It's fixed. But that's not necessarily the case when you're thinking about scaling up businesses. When you want to scale businesses, you don't think of this house, you think of something else. And so that's when I realized that House of Scale was just showing a wrong, giving a wrong feel about scaling. And I went back to the drawing board and I realized I had to change it. It was called the 5E Scale Engine after that. The 5E Scale Engine, this whole process took months before it became what it is. I even have a blog post talking about it. I think this 5E Scale Engine truly represents all the concepts, the framework and the lessons, the mistakes that I went through on my entrepreneurship journey, and translates it really well into a framework that people can really understand. I know this works because I ran multiple classes on this. I have clients that I coach on a regular basis to scale up their businesses, and all that I use is the 5E Scale Engine. This is the 5E Scale Engine that I put into my book. So if you haven't gotten a book, go check it out. It's at superscaling.com/book. And this is a book that has sold out and I've really just restocked. And so if you haven't, go get a copy right now. Hopefully this shows you why the 5E Scale Engine is so important to your business and how you can actually apply it. I'm going to put out more videos that will dive into the 5 different principles so that you understand each of the principles and how it applies to your business. Stay tuned, and in the meantime, let me know what you think. Drop a comment, like this video, share it with someone, and more importantly, hit the subscribe button so that you'll be notified whenever I put out a new video. Until then, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.